You're drifting above a silent ocean, the waves calm, the horizon endless, but far beneath the surface lies a world few have ever seen, the Mariana Trench. What strange creatures glow in its eternal night? How does life survive under pressures that could crush steel? And what hidden clues does this trench hold about alien oceans beyond Earth? Welcome to Nature Nap, where we explore the wonders of nature and animals as you drift to sleep. Tonight, we'll sink gently into Earth's deepest scar, discovering landscapes stranger than fiction, life forms built for silence, and mysteries that stretch far beyond our imagination. Close your eyes. The descent begins now. Far out in the western Pacific, where blue ocean seems endless, the seafloor suddenly folds downward in a curve so vast it feels like the Earth itself is sighing. The Mariana Trench is not a neat hole, not a tidy crack, but a long crescent. It stretches nearly 1,500 miles, longer than the coast of California, arching like a quiet scar carved into the ocean floor. This trench is not narrow. On average, it spans about 43 miles across, wide enough to hold entire mountain ranges side by side. If you could drain away the ocean, you'd stand at the edge of a canyon so broad that its opposite rim would fade into the horizon. It is not a sharp fissure, but a great bent valley, the largest one on the planet. The shape exists because one plate of the Earth, the Pacific Plate, is slowly diving beneath another. As it descends, it pulls the crust down like fabric sliding under a heavy quilt. That simple act of subduction, patient and invisible, sculpts a chasm deeper than any other. From above, on a satellite map, the trench looks like the outline of a moonlit smile, half hidden in the Pacific dusk. Though we call it the Mariana Trench, the name is not drawn from explorers, but from the Mariana Islands nearby. Those islands rise like beads of stone, just west of the abyss, volcanic children of the same forces that carved the trench. To name the trench after them is to remind us that even the deepest shadows are bound to the light of islands, coral and the human settlements resting above. And so, the trench holds its shape, long, wide, curved and quiet, an arc in the sea floor. If you hover above in thought, imagining the Pacific waters stripped away, you would see the Earth's own crescent-shaped wound. And like all wounds, it tells a story of pressure, of movement, of time. The Mariana Trench is not unique in being deep, but unique in being the deepest. The ocean has other scars, the Tonga Trench, the Philippine, the Kermadec, but none plunge quite as far. Its shape, long and graceful, is the silent invitation to explore the rest of its mysteries. And so we begin our descent. From the shape of the trench itself, carved by plates shifting beneath the sea, to the unimaginable pressures awaiting below. If the surface can hold such quiet curves, what happens in the places where water presses harder than mountains? The ocean deepens in slow degrees. First the light thins, then the blue darkens into ink. At 100 meters, sunlight is only a pale shimmer. At 500, the surface is a fading memory. And then, past 1,000 meters, there is only night. Still the water falls away, layer by layer, until it meets the trench, where darkness becomes eternity. Here, the floor of the Earth tilts sharply downward, and the descent continues for almost 11 kilometers. The Challenger Deep, the lowest point, sits so far below the surface that Mount Everest could be placed inside, and still its summit would be covered by water. At that depth, the weight of the ocean is no longer imaginable in human terms. The pressure exceeds 1,000 times what we feel at sea level. It is like holding the mass of 50 jumbo jets across the surface of a single human body. Our bones, our lungs, our delicate vessels would collapse instantly. Yet in this silent place, small bodies built for the pressure move with calm ease, proving that life has ways of enduring where we cannot. Water, though soft to the touch, reveals its hidden force here. Every layer above presses downward with patient insistence, each meter adding weight, until the molecules themselves feel squeezed closer together. The deep sea is less a void than a cathedral of pressure, its invisible pillars holding the water in a grip we cannot resist. Scientists often describe this in numbers, in thousands of pounds per square inch, but to imagine it is to think of mountains stacked upon mountains, not of rock but of water, pressing without pause. In such conditions, light from the surface cannot survive. The sun's rays stop at 1,000 meters, leaving the trench wrapped in perpetual night. The creatures that live here never see a sunrise. For them, light is not a given but a gift, created in tiny sparks of bioluminescence, or reflected faintly from the glimmer of another moving body. To us, accustomed to a sky, it seems like a loss. But to them, this is normal, an endless midnight sea. The cold deepens too. The water temperature hovers just above freezing, between 1 and 4 degrees Celsius, a chill that never shifts with the seasons. Unlike the surface, where summer warms and winter cools, the trench remains steady. It is a realm without weather, without day or night, without the small rhythms we take for granted. Pressure, darkness, and cold are its only constants, shaping everything that lives here. Imagine floating downward, past layer after layer of blue, your ears filled with the hush of water. The weight builds silently, a hand pressing harder and harder. Soon your body could no longer tell where it ends and the ocean begins. This is the nature of pressure. It does not announce itself with sound or movement. It simply exists, a quiet inevitability. And so the trench reminds us, depth is not only distance but experience. To descend is to step into another physics, another kind of silence, another measure of time. The deeper you go, the slower the world feels, as if pressure itself bends perception. What crushes us is simply the steady background for life here. The trench does not ask permission, it only waits. If the ocean's surface can feel like freedom, its depths remind us of boundaries. We cannot breathe here, cannot last more than a moment, but the life adapted to this place thrives precisely where we cannot. What is suffocation to us is simply home to them. The trench holds this quiet paradox. It is unbearable to human bodies, yet entirely natural to the beings born into its weight. As you drift with this thought, consider how the earth holds extremes within itself. Mountains scrape the sky, deserts burn in sunlight, and trenches plunge into darkness and pressure. Each one is a limit, and yet each is filled with life. If Everest shows the heights a planet can reach, the Mariana Trench shows the depths it can endure. Both are reminders of scale, not of our size, but of Earth's vastness. And so we leave this section of the journey with a question that lingers like the echo of water pressing on every surface. If pressure can reshape what life becomes, what unseen forces are shaping us quietly each day? Every trench has its discoverers, though not in the sense of footsteps and flags. The Mariana Trench was first known not by sight, but by sound, the echo of lead weights lowered into water, the faint tug of rope as it spooled into the depths. In 1875, the British ship HMS Challenger paused in the Pacific and made a sounding. A weighted line sank down until at nearly 11 kilometers it touched bottom. The crew could not see what they had touched. They knew only that the ocean was deeper than anyone had dared imagine. It was here the name Challenger Deep was later given, a tribute not to the place itself, but to the vessel that first revealed its existence. Decades passed before humans thought of descending. The sea was already mysterious at 1,000 meters, where submarines groaned with strain. To dream of 10 times that depth was almost absurd. Yet in 1960, two men, Jacques Piccard, a Swiss engineer, and Don Walsh, a US Navy lieutenant, boarded a vessel called Trieste. It was not elegant. A steel sphere barely large enough for two men was bolted beneath a massive float filled with gasoline, lighter than water. The plan was simple: release ballast and sink until the trench gave them no more distance. For nearly 5 hours they fell through darkness. The windows showed only drifting snow of particles, a constant reminder of the surface far above. The cabin creaked with pressure, the steel groaning like an old ship in winter. At one point, a loud crack split the silence. The outer window had fractured under strain. Still they continued. At last the instruments showed bottom. They had reached nearly 11 kilometers down. They stayed for only 20 minutes, long enough to note silt, flatfish-like creatures, and the eerie stillness of the deepest place on Earth. Then they began the long ascent, 7 hours back to the world of light. That single dive stood alone for over half a century. Technology advanced in orbit before it advanced in the trench. Humans walked on the moon before they returned to the deepest point on their own planet. Remote submersibles went instead, small robots built to endure where flesh could not. They sampled mud, filmed ghostly amphipods, and proved that even here, life thrived. Then, in 2012, filmmaker James Cameron built his own submersible, the Deep Sea Challenger. Unlike Trieste, it was slender and green, designed like a vertical torpedo with a pilot sphere at its base. Cameron descended alone. For hours he dropped into silence, reaching the bottom where he spent nearly 3 hours filming, gathering samples, and capturing the first high-definition footage of the Challenger Deep. He described it as an alien landscape, barren yet oddly alive in its simplicity. More recently, Explorers like Victor Vescovo have returned in specially engineered subs, making multiple descents in 2019 and beyond. For the first time, the trench is no longer an untouched secret, but a place visited, studied, mapped. Each expedition reveals a little more: new species, new geology, new traces of humanity, even in its pollution. And yet, for all the visits, the trench remains vastly unknown. Only a handful of humans, fewer than those who have stood on the moon, have seen its bottom directly. Exploration of the trench is a history not just of technology, but of patience. From the first rope dropped by Challenger, to the groaning sphere of Trieste, to modern titanium submersibles, each step has been a question answered slowly. How far can we go? What do we find when we arrive? What does it mean to stand, even briefly, at the floor of the world? And so the trench keeps its record of visitors: a British survey ship, 2 men in a steel sphere, a filmmaker in a green submersible, a handful of engineers and pilots, daring pressure that could flatten steel. The list is short, and each entry carries weight, like the pressure itself. Humanity has always measured itself against extremes: Everest for height, Sahara for heat, Antarctica for cold. The Mariana Trench is our measure of depth. And as you rest with that thought, consider this quiet question: if so few have dared to descend into the deepest trench on Earth, what unknown journeys still wait, silent and unattempted, inside the darkness of our own lives? To imagine the bottom of the Mariana Trench is to imagine a world without sunlight, shaped not by wind or rain, but by forces far older and heavier. The walls of the trench rise steep and sharp, like the cliffs of an inverted canyon. They drop away into shadow, their slopes covered in fine sediments that have drifted downward for millions of years. Every fragment of shell, every grain of dust, every trace of life that has fallen from the surface slowly gathers here. Layer by layer, the trench has been padded with the remains of the ocean above, a quiet archive built in silence. If you could stand upon those walls, you would feel the scale in your bones. The cliffs rise higher than the Himalayas, if measured from base to rim. But here, their peaks never see light. Instead, they are cloaked in mud, rock, and the slow ooze of sediment. Some parts of the walls look jagged, torn by earthquakes that rattle through the trench as the plates grind together. Others slope gently, almost like a desert dune, though the sand here is replaced by the powdered remains of countless tiny organisms that once floated in the sunlit surface waters. Among these slopes, volcanoes rise silently. They do not throw fire into the sky, but release plumes of heat and minerals into the cold, heavy dark. Mud volcanoes push fine particles upward, bubbling out sediment in slow eruptions that can last years. Hydrothermal vents, rarer still, spew mineral-rich fluids, creating shimmering towers of chemical energy where none should exist. Around these vents, bacteria bloom, feeding on chemicals instead of sunlight, creating the base of ecosystems unlike anything we know on land. Here, heat creates oases in the cold, and life gathers as if around a hidden hearth. The floor itself is uneven, far from the flat plane one might imagine. Long ridges mark where the plates pull and shove against each other. Small trenches within the trench ripple outward, some only meters deep, others stretching for miles. In some places the floor is coated in thick ooze, so soft that a probe sinks into it like snow. In others, bare rock shows through, scraped clean by the grinding of tectonic plates. The variety is endless, a landscape as rich as mountains and valleys, but inverted into shadow. The silence of this place is not truly silent. Earthquakes rumble through the trench, though their sound is softened by water. Each tremor shifts the floor, pushes walls, and sometimes releases plumes of gas. Carbon dioxide and methane rise through cracks, joining the water in invisible streams. In other places, gas hydrates, frozen cages of water and gas, lie hidden in the sediments. They shimmer under the faint lights of submersibles, ghostly reminders of chemical stores trapped beneath the earth. These features tell us that the trench is alive in its own way, not static, but constantly reshaped by unseen forces. Every so often, landslides ripple through the walls, sediment collapses downward, tumbling into the depths, stirring clouds of silt that may hang in the water for months. These slides can bury entire valleys, erasing old features and creating new ones. For the creatures living here, it is as if the world has shifted overnight. What seems eternal is actually fragile, shifting under pressures that never rest. And above it all, the rain continues. Not of water, but of particles drifting down from the surface, tiny bodies of plankton, fragments of fish, bits of organic matter we call marine snow. Over centuries, this snow settles into the sediment, feeding the hidden floor. The trench becomes a graveyard of particles, a steady archive of what once lived in the sunlit layers far above. Every handful of mud here holds the history of oceans stretching back millions of years. To picture this landscape is to picture a world that bends the mind. Cliffs taller than Everest, valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, volcanoes that breathe not fire but minerals into a freezing night, plains that shift and slide even under crushing silence. It is a place that feels alien, yet it belongs to Earth, a reminder that the planet we know is far stranger than the surface suggests. As you rest with this thought, ask yourself, if landscapes unseen can be so vast, how much of the world we walk upon remains hidden, waiting quietly in the dark? There is a word for the world that begins 6 kilometers below the ocean's surface. Scientists call it the Hadal zone, after Hades, the ancient underworld. The name is fitting, though not for its terror. It is not a fiery hell, but a cold, pressurized kingdom of shadows, one that covers less than 2% of the seafloor, yet contains some of the planet's most extraordinary mysteries. The Mariana Trench lies entirely within this realm. To say Hadal is to point to the trenches of the world, each one a doorway to the deepest parts of Earth's story. This zone begins where even the bathyal depths, those midnight waters, 3 or 4 kilometers down, finally give way. Past 6,000 meters, the ocean enters a new register, one beyond the reach of most submarines, and almost all living memory. The Hadal zone does not sprawl like the abyssal plains. It is carved thin and long, trenches slicing into the crust like scars. The Mariana Trench, the Tonga, the Kermadec, the Philippine, all of them share this singular feature, narrow valleys that plunge where the Earth itself bends. It is easy to think of these zones as empty, barren stretches where life cannot survive. For much of history that was the assumption. How could anything live where pressure crushes, where sunlight never enters, where food is only what drifts down from above? Yet the Hadal zone is not a void. It is alive, populated by creatures adapted so precisely to their surroundings that they seem like emissaries from another world. Snailfish with bodies so delicate they would collapse at shallower depths, amphipods large and translucent, feeding on the snow that falls from the upper waters, microbes clinging to rocks and sediments, transforming chemicals into the basis of an unseen food chain. The Hadal zone is not lifeless, it is simply other. For scientists, these trenches serve as natural laboratories, windows into how life can exist under conditions that seem impossible. Each discovery reframes what we believe about limits. We once said life could not endure without light. The Hadal zone proved otherwise. We once thought high pressure was fatal to cells. Now we know some creatures rely on it. Their enzymes and membranes shaped by pressure, as surely as ours are shaped by oxygen. The Hadal zone is not merely deep water. It is a new dimension of Earth, one with rules all its own. And then there is the silence. In shallower seas, one can hear the calls of whales, the crackle of shrimp, the sound of waves filtered through water. In the Hadal zone, silence stretches so wide that the rare crack of an earthquake or the slow moan of shifting rock becomes the loudest sound for miles. Yet even silence here is alive. It carries the weight of time, the density of water, the presence of unseen organisms that never rise to the surface. To listen to the Hadal zone is to listen to a language we cannot yet translate. Despite covering such a small fraction of the Earth, the Hadal zone matters in ways far beyond its size. It is here that sediments accumulate, pulling carbon from the surface into the deep, storing it for centuries. It is here that tectonic plates recycle crust, diving into the mantle to be reborn as volcanic arcs and island chains. In this sense, the Hadal zone is not just a grave of marine snow and fallen bodies. It is a workshop of the planet, a place where destruction and renewal take place side by side. To name it after Hades is to acknowledge its separation from our world. Yet the Hadal zone is not distant. Every breath we take carries oxygen shaped by the oceans. Every tremor of the Earth echoes through these trenches. They are hidden, but not apart. We live because they exist. And as you drift in thought, imagine this. The Hadal zone begins, not at the surface, but at a threshold of depth. It is like stepping into a new room of a house you thought you knew. For centuries, humans believed the ocean was a single expanse. Now we see it layered. Surface, twilight, abyss, and finally the Hadal. Each level is not just deeper, but stranger. each one asking us to reconsider what it means to inhabit a living planet. If we can give a name to the ocean's darkest and most hidden realm, can we also name the hidden depths within ourselves, the places beyond our daily light? In the Hadal trenches, where the sun has never shone, life has found ways to write itself into the dark. Here, every creature is both fragile and resilient, soft and strong, as if the absence of light has carved out new rules of existence. They drift, crawl, and swim through a world so still that their smallest movements seem like acts of defiance against the weight of the ocean above. One of the most surprising residents of the Mariana Trench is the deep-sea snailfish. Its body is pale, almost translucent, shaped less like a hunter and more like a ghost. Unlike the rigid skeletons of surface fish, snailfish bodies are soft, almost gelatinous, allowing them to resist crushing pressure. At depths that would collapse metal, the snailfish moves with quiet ease. For scientists, its presence is proof that life can thrive at the very edge of physical possibility. For the snailfish, it is simply home. Amphipods, small shrimp-like scavengers, are another constant in the trench. They dart across the sediment, picking apart the organic fragments that drift down from far above. Marine snow, whale bones, fish that never survived the long journey, all become food in the waiting jaws of amphipods. Some are so small they can rest on the tip of a fingernail. Others, in the Hadal trenches, grow to astonishing size, as if the depth itself grants them license to expand beyond their surface cousins. Their translucent bodies glow faintly under the lights of submersibles, their simple persistence echoing the patience of the trench. Among them move creatures that seem to lack color altogether. In darkness, pigmentation is not needed, and so many trench dwellers are ghostly white or entirely transparent. Their skin is thin, their forms delicate, their organs visible as faint shadows within. To see them is to be reminded that camouflage is unnecessary when there is no light to hide from. They are stripped to essence, movement without ornament, survival without display. Predators are rare here, for energy is scarce. Most creatures are scavengers, feeding on whatever the deep delivers. Gelatinous fish drift with open mouths, conserving energy, waiting for the random gift of a meal. Others are ambush hunters, using silence and patience as their only weapons. To live here is to move slowly, to wait carefully, to treat every fragment of food as sacred. It is easy to imagine the trench as empty, a void that swallows life, but when the lights of a submersible sweep across the floor, the water comes alive with these small, strange beings. Each has chosen a different strategy: softness over strength, patience over speed, invisibility over color. They are not failures of evolution, but triumphs of adaptation. They remind us that survival is not about fitting an ideal shape, but about learning to endure the pressures of your world. Drifting among them, the silence grows deeper. The creatures of eternal darkness do not sing or call as whales do, nor do they chase and leap as dolphins might. They are quiet, their presence marked by faint movements, slow pulses of fins, soft scuttling over sediment. Their stillness is not emptiness, but necessity. In a place where energy is scarce, silence is the rhythm of life. And yet there is beauty here, not the beauty of color or speed, but the beauty of resilience. The snailfish pressing against impossible pressure, the amphipod carving survival from a flake of falling matter, the translucent creature whose entire body whispers of fragility, yet endures where we cannot. They are reminders that life is never absent, only transformed, reshaped to meet the rules of its environment. As you imagine these beings, glowing faintly in the dark, consider this quiet question: if life can reimagine itself in the eternal night of the trench, how might we reimagine ourselves in the unseen depths of our own experience? In the midnight of the trench, where no sunlight has ever fallen, life invents its own stars. Here countless beings carry lanterns within their bodies, tiny sparks of chemistry that glow against the darkness. Bioluminescence is not rare in the deep sea, it is nearly universal. To descend into the trench is to drift through a silent constellation, not of distant suns, but of creatures lighting themselves softly in the water. Most of these lights shine blue or green, the colors that travel farthest in seawater. To us, they would appear like small pulses, faint at first, then startling against the backdrop of endless night. For the animals here, these colors are language. Some use them to attract prey, holding a faint glow until curious smaller creatures draw near. Others use sudden flashes to startle or confuse predators, disappearing into the dark the moment the light fades. Still others use bioluminescence as camouflage, matching the faint glow of surface light filtering down. even though that light is only the dimmest echo. One can imagine a small fish drifting with slow ease, its body dark and unseen, until the tip of a fin flickers with light. To another creature, the glow is a lure, an invitation to feed. The predator waits motionless until the moment comes, then strikes in silence. This is the quiet drama of the deep, not roaring hunts or desperate chases, but faint sparks and patient stillness, survival written in the glow of living lanterns. And there are those who use light to speak. Some jelly-like beings release trails of glowing fluid, leaving behind a luminous echo of their passing. Others flash in patterns, the way fireflies do on land, signaling to mates or warning rivals to keep their distance. In the absence of sound, light becomes a voice. For the trench dwellers, communication is not carried by words or calls, but by brief glowing signatures in the black. For every human who has descended, the sight of these lights is one of the most astonishing gifts of the trench. Imagine falling into a place colder than ice, darker than midnight, heavier than mountains, and then seeing tiny sparks drifting around you, like stars swirling in a secret sky. In that moment, the abyss is not emptiness, it is alive with beauty. Scientists study the chemistry of these lights and find a shared thread, molecules called luciferins reacting with oxygen, releasing energy as light. Different species use variations of this reaction, but the principle is the same. What is most striking is that the ability has evolved not once, but many times in creatures that share no close relation. This suggests that in the deep sea, light is not an accident, but a necessity. Where eyes are useless, light becomes survival. Even some bacteria glow faintly, coating fish or settling in symbiotic partnerships that allow their hosts to carry steady lamps. A small fish might house glowing microbes in its belly, using them to attract prey or to find companions. In return, the bacteria gain a safe home and a steady supply of nutrients. This quiet collaboration between species turns darkness into opportunity. And yet, despite all we have learned, much remains unknown. Many of the glowing creatures have never been captured. They flicker briefly in the cameras of submersibles, then vanish into the dark. Each new expedition brings back new lights, new signals, new proof that bioluminescence is one of the most important currencies of the deep. To study it is to study survival itself. For those of us who cannot descend, the thought is comforting. Even in the deepest, coldest, most silent places of Earth, light finds a way to appear, not in the form of sunrises or bonfires, but as small, steady glimmers carried by fragile bodies. It is as though life refuses to let darkness be absolute. There is always a spark. So as you close your eyes, imagine that you are not in darkness at all, but drifting among living stars. Their glow is soft, unhurried, patient. It does not dazzle like sunlight, but soothes like candlelight. The deep sea holds these lights as a reminder. Even in the greatest shadow, there can be radiance. And as the glow fades into silence, a question lingers in the dark. If life in the trench makes its own stars, what hidden lights might we carry within ourselves, waiting quietly to be seen? To imagine life at the bottom of the trench, you must first imagine pressure as something constant, inescapable, and absolute. At nearly 11 kilometers down, the weight of the water above presses with a force beyond human endurance. The steel submarine would collapse without careful engineering, yet soft-bodied fish glide through this invisible weight as though it were no more than a breeze. Their survival lies in adaptations so subtle and profound that they seem almost like whispers of nature's secret design. The first secret is in their enzymes. In surface creatures, the delicate folds of these proteins begin to fail under pressure, as if their shapes are crushed out of alignment. Deep-sea species, however, carry versions of enzymes built to withstand compression. Their chemistry does not buckle but continues to flow, allowing cells to breathe, digest, and repair themselves even when surrounded by tons of water. Pressure becomes not a barrier, but a simple backdrop, the way air feels to us on land. Then there are the membranes. In human bodies, the fats and lipids that make up our cell walls would stiffen and fail under the trench's squeeze. In Hadal animals, the membranes remain fluid, able to bend and flex without tearing. This resilience is achieved through molecules arranged in careful ways, as if their very architecture has been tuned to endure. The result is a body that is neither rigid nor fragile, but supple, able to withstand forces that would crush anything unprepared. Another adaptation is what is absent rather than present. Many trench creatures have no air-filled cavities, no swim bladders to regulate buoyancy, no hollow spaces in bones. On the surface, these structures are useful, but at depth they are fatal, collapsing like broken shells. By shedding such cavities altogether, deep-sea animals eliminate the risk. Their buoyancy comes instead from the balance of tissues and fluids, their lightness carried not by air, but by the harmony of water within water. And within these bodies, scientists have discovered special molecules that act like shields. One is a compound called TMAO, which stabilizes proteins under pressure. In surface fish, it is present in small amounts, but in trench dwellers, it is abundant, a natural armor for the delicate machinery of life. Each molecule helps resist the squeeze, preserving the balance of chemistry that makes existence possible. Without these invisible guardians, the cells would unravel, and life would end. With them, life continues quietly, as if nothing extraordinary were happening at all. It is remarkable that creatures born into such extremes do not appear to struggle. For them, the pressure is not a threat. They have never known otherwise. To imagine their perspective is to consider that what seems unbearable to us is to another simply normal. Pressure defines their reality, shaping every feature, but it does not diminish them. Instead, it has guided evolution into forms we could not have imagined: soft bodies, resilient membranes, proteins braced with invisible scaffolds. There is a lesson hidden in this. We often see pressure as something to escape, a force that weighs us down. But in the trench, pressure is not fought against. It is embraced, incorporated, even relied upon. Without it, these creatures would not exist in the shapes they do. The crushing force of the ocean has not destroyed them, but given them their form. Imagine floating in that dark silence, a fragile snailfish or amphipod drifting with ease, unbothered by the tons of water pressing in from every side. Around you there is no sign of strain, no creaking of metal, no reminder of danger. There is only life, adapted so well that the impossible becomes ordinary. The trench teaches us that survival is not resistance alone, but transformation. And as you carry this image with you into rest, let the question echo softly: if life can adapt so seamlessly to pressure unimaginable, how might we reshape ourselves to endure the unseen pressures that press on us each day? Beneath the silence of the trench, where even the smallest fish struggle to survive, life continues in forms almost too small to see. Microbes, invisible architects of existence, thrive in the sediments of the Mariana Trench. For every snailfish or amphipod, there are countless bacterial cells shaping the unseen foundation of the ecosystem. They are not fragile intruders but ancient inhabitants, proof that life can flourish even in a place we once thought lifeless. These bacteria survive not by sunlight, but by other means. On the surface, life depends on photosynthesis, plants and algae catching the sun to power themselves. Here, in darkness eternal, microbes rely on chemosynthesis. They use chemical energy instead of light, drawing sustenance from compounds seeping through the seafloor. To us, it seems impossible that such a simple process can sustain life. To them, it is not only enough, it is abundance. Whole communities exist on this quiet alchemy. Some of these microbes feed on hydrocarbons and metals, consuming substances that would poison most other organisms. They transform toxins into nutrients, reshaping danger into survival. Their presence is a reminder that what seems waste to one form of life can be the foundation for another. In the sediments of the trench, oil traces, chemical residues, and even heavy metals become part of a food chain invisible to our eyes. These tiny beings work endlessly, recycling and reimagining matter in ways that sustain the trench as a whole. At hydrothermal vents, microbial mats form in ghostly patches, clinging to rock and bubbling chimneys. They weave filaments, building carpets of life where no plant could ever grow. Around them gather amphipods and other scavengers, feeding on the microbial fields as though they were vast forests. In the stillness of the trench, these mats are the equivalent of meadows, places where energy is collected and distributed to larger creatures. Without them, the deep ocean would be emptier still. Some scientists believe that microbes like these resemble the earliest life on Earth. Before plants, before animals, before even the familiar shapes of cells we recognize today, there may have been organisms that survived on chemicals in the dark. To study the trench microbes is to look backward in time, peering into the possible origin of life itself. Their existence also points outward, to other worlds. If life can exist here, in cold, pressurized darkness, perhaps it could also exist beneath the icy crust of distant moons, living quietly on chemical energy alone. When submersibles sample the mud, they bring up sediments dense with microbial life. Each grime can hold billions of cells, an invisible city of organisms working together, competing and transforming the sea floor. What looks like barren silt is alive with activity, every grain surrounded by creatures too small to see, but powerful enough to shape the chemistry of the deep. The trench is not a graveyard, but a breathing system, held together by microbes. As you drift into this thought, imagine the ocean floor not as empty, but as teeming. Picture unseen colonies stretching across the sediments, glowing only in the mind's eye, a reminder that the invisible often outnumbers the visible. The large animals draw our attention, but it is the smallest ones that truly keep the trench alive. They are the silent majority, working without pause, unnoticed yet essential. And so the quiet question lingers in the dark. If entire ecosystems can exist beyond our sight, what hidden forces might be sustaining us, unnoticed in the depths of our own lives? The trench is not only the realm of the small and invisible. In the silence of the Hadal waters, some beings grow to surprising sizes, as if the deep has given them space and reason to expand beyond the limits of their surface relatives. These giants are not monsters, but quiet exaggerations, lives stretched into new proportions by the strange rules of the abyss. Among the most striking are the giant amphipods. On the surface, their cousins are tiny, no larger than grains of rice, scurrying unseen. Yet here, in the depths of the Mariana Trench, amphipods can reach the size of a human hand. Their translucent shells gleam like crystal under the lights of a submersible, their legs moving with delicate precision as they search the sediment for food. It is as though pressure and darkness have opened a doorway, granting them a scale unimaginable in shallower seas. Along the margins of the trench, where the slopes meet wider ocean plains, deep-diving mammals sometimes pass. Beaked whales, masters of breath and silence, are known to hunt at depths greater than 2 kilometers, and some may press even deeper, skirting the edges of the trench. They feed on squid and other creatures that rise into the water column, moving through the dark with patience and skill. Though they do not live permanently in the Hadal zone, their presence at its borders reminds us that even mammals can brush against the trench's edges, daring to enter the realm of eternal night before rising again for air. The giant squid, long a creature of myth, finds its home in waters near trenches as well. Rarely seen alive, it is a predator built for stealth and scale, its tentacles stretching longer than the length of a bus. In the quiet dark it waits, muscles coiled, eyes large enough to catch the faintest glimmer of light. For centuries, sailors told stories of sea monsters dragging ships under. Today we know those stories were shadows of truth, whispers of encounters with squid that live far beneath the reach of sunlight. Their vast bodies remain unseen by most, but their presence near the trench reminds us that myth and reality often share the same waters. Other giants move more slowly. Deep-sea sharks patrol the waters, some larger than cars, their movements slow but certain. Unlike their surface relatives, these sharks conserve energy, relying on patience rather than speed. They glide along the trench walls, their silhouettes barely distinguishable against the black. For them, the trench is not an alien world, but a familiar hunting ground, a place where they have lived for millennia without interruption. Even stranger are the giant isopods, creatures that resemble oversized pill bugs, their segmented shells curling protectively around their bodies. On the sea floor, they trundle over the mud, scavenging the remains of animals that drift down from above. Their size is a surprise to us, but in the deep it makes sense. The pressure, the scarcity of food, the long spans between meals, all have shaped them into slow, heavy creatures, capable of surviving months without eating. To see one is to see endurance embodied, a reminder that in the trench, patience is as important as hunger. The gigantism of deep-sea life is not fully understood. Some scientists suggest that the cold slows metabolism, allowing bodies to grow larger before reaching their limits. Others point to the lack of predators, which frees some species from the need to remain small and quick. Still others note that in an environment of scarcity, larger size can be a strategy, enabling creatures to travel farther, eat more at once, or endure longer between meals. Whatever the reason, the result is a world where small forms become great, where the deep exaggerates what the surface keeps contained. For the human imagination, these giants stir something primal. We are used to thinking of the deep as empty, barren, and small. But to glimpse a hand-sized amphipod or a squid with unblinking eyes, the size of plates, is to remember that the ocean holds shapes far beyond our scale. In the trench, life is not diminished by pressure and darkness. It is magnified, stretched, and remade. Close your eyes and picture these beings moving through the black water, a whale passing in silence, its body massive and sleek, a squid unfolding its arms in the dark, lantern-like eyes gleaming, an isopod curling across the mud, slow and steady, indifferent to time. These creatures are not myths, not dreams, but part of the same earth we walk upon. Their strangeness is not alien but earthly, reminding us that the planet is wider and deeper than we often imagine. And as you rest with this thought, let the quiet question linger. If the deep can take small creatures and magnify them into giants, what parts of ourselves might also grow beyond recognition, waiting in the dark to be revealed? At the southern end of the Mariana Trench lies a place that feels like the very bottom of the world. It is called the Challenger Deep, named after the HMS Challenger expedition of the 19th century, the first to measure its staggering depth. This small depression within an already immense trench is the deepest known point on the surface of the Earth. To reach it is to travel farther below sea level than the highest mountain rises above it, a reversal of scale that humbles the imagination. Measured at nearly 11 kilometers down, the Challenger Deep is the kind of depth that resists comprehension. If Mount Everest were placed inside it, the peak would still rest beneath more than a mile of water. This is not just a point on a map, but a threshold where pressure exceeds 16,000 pounds per square inch. The numbers are astonishing, but what lingers most is the silence, a silence older and heavier than any we know at the surface. The first humans to reach it were Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh in 1960 aboard the bathyscaphe Trieste. Their vessel was little more than a steel sphere attached to a float of gasoline, designed to resist pressure rather than invite comfort. For hours they descended through black water, the weight of the Pacific pressing against every seam. When they finally touched bottom, the silt rose in clouds, hiding the floor from view. They reported seeing small life forms, a revelation that even here, in the planet's deepest shadow, existence had not surrendered. Their stay was short, only 20 minutes before they began the long ascent back into light. More than 50 years passed before another human returned. In 2012, filmmaker James Cameron designed his own submersible, the Deep Sea Challenger. Unlike Trieste, his vessel carried cameras, lights and instruments, allowing him to record the alien floor in high definition. He described a flat plain of soft sediment, barren yet strangely alive in its stillness. He gathered samples, captured images, and lingered in the depths for hours before rising back through the black. His descent reminded the world that exploration of our own planet still holds mysteries as profound as any in space. Since then, other explorers have followed. Victor Vescovo in 2019 piloted a sub repeatedly to the Challenger Deep, making more descents than anyone before him. Each dive brought back samples of life, sediments, and unexpectedly, traces of human presence. Plastic debris was found at the deepest point of the Earth, proof that even here, far beyond our reach, the influence of the surface had arrived. It was a sobering discovery, a reminder that no place is untouched. The Challenger Deep is more than a geographic record. It is a symbol of the limits of exploration, a place so difficult to reach that fewer people have visited it than have walked on the moon. Its name carries the spirit of challenge not only because of the ship that first measured it, but because to approach it is to test the edge of human possibility. Each descent is not just a scientific mission, but a meditation on scale, on what it means to meet the Earth at its deepest. Imagine standing at the rim of a canyon that cannot be seen, lowering yourself into its blackness mile after mile. Imagine feeling the air compress into silence, the walls vanishing, until only pressure and darkness remain. This is the essence of the Challenger Deep, not a place defined by landscape or landmarks, but by depth itself. It is the purest expression of downwardness, of what it means for a planet to fold into itself. To rest with this thought is to be reminded of how small we are, and yet how far we reach. The Challenger Deep does not ask for conquest, it simply waits, silent, patient, unchanging. To visit it is not to master it, but to glimpse what lies beyond mastery, a stillness so complete that it seems eternal. And so the quiet question arises, if the deepest place on Earth can be reached only by a handful of souls, what deepest parts of ourselves remain waiting, untouched, beneath all the weight we carry? Beneath the Pacific waves, the Mariana Trench is not just a hollow in the seafloor, it is a living scar, shaped and reshaped by the restless hands of the Earth itself. Here tectonic plates grind together with patient force, pulling one under the other in a slow-motion collapse. This act of subduction does more than carve a trench, It gives rise to features as strange and varied as the creatures that drift above them. One of the most dramatic features is the volcanic arc that stretches west of the trench. As the Pacific Plate plunges beneath the Mariana Plate, it melts deep underground, feeding magma that rises into fire. The result is a chain of volcanic islands, each one a visible reminder of the hidden violence below. These islands are not still, they grow, shift and erupt, born from the same forces that carved the trench's depths. To stand on their shores is to stand on the rim of the planet's furnace. Within the trench itself, scientists believe deposits of gas hydrates lie buried in the sediments. These strange substances are cages of ice holding molecules of gas, often methane, within their crystal lattice. They are stable only under immense pressure and cold, conditions the trench provides in abundance. To disturb them is to release plumes of gas, bubbles that shimmer upward in the dark. Their existence suggests that the trench floor is not only a graveyard of sediments, but also a reservoir of hidden fuels, locked away in icy bonds beneath the mud. Seismic activity is another constant companion of the trench. Earthquakes ripple through its walls, shifting sediments, collapsing slopes, and sending landslides cascading into the abyss. Some of these quakes are shallow, rattling the ocean floor like distant thunder. Others are deep, hundreds of kilometers below, their tremors echoing through the crust. These quakes remind us that the trench is not still. It is alive with motion, its walls flexing and groaning as the plates continue their ancient dance. And perhaps most astonishing of all is the fact that the trench is not fixed. The seafloor here is constantly reshaped by the slow grind of tectonics. Over millions of years, the trench deepens, widens, shifts, features appear and vanish. What is measured today is not what was measured 1,000 years ago, nor what will be measured 1,000 years hence. The trench is less a place than a process, a manifestation of Earth's restless nature. To imagine these features is to imagine a world without permanence. Volcanoes breathe fire into the sea. Ice-like hydrates trap gases in the mud. Earthquakes shudder through the walls, reshaping slopes. The trench is a theater of geological change, vast and unceasing, hidden in darkness but no less real for its invisibility. For those who study it, the trench offers a glimpse of Earth as it truly is, not the still surface we walk upon, but a planet in constant motion, forever building and unbuilding itself. The Mariana Trench is not an accident. It is the necessary result of forces older than life, older even than the oceans themselves. And so, as you let this image settle, consider the quiet question it carries. If the Earth itself is always reshaping, what parts of us, unseen and silent, are shifting even now, preparing to become something new? The Mariana Trench feels silent to the imagination, yet silence here is never absolute. Water, so dense and patient, carries sound farther than air ever could. In the abyss where light is gone and sight is useless, sound becomes the truest messenger. To listen here is to open yourself to echoes of life, of Earth, and of the vast machinery of the ocean itself. Sound travels differently in the deep. It moves more quickly than in air, and the weight of the water presses it farther, as if the trench were a cathedral designed to carry whispers to every corner. A call made here can travel hundreds of kilometers, reaching places unseen. For creatures in the dark, this is survival, to be heard when you cannot be seen, to sense the presence of another by the tremor in the water. Whale songs have been recorded echoing through the trench. The long mournful calls of fin whales and the patterned rhythms of blue whales ripple down the slopes, filling the abyss with notes that seem to stretch time. They are not constant, but when they arrive, they turn the trench into an amphitheater, each wall carrying the sound onward. For us it feels like a voice from another world, but for the whales, it is navigation, communication, a way to keep company in the vast dark. Not all sounds come from life. Ships passing on the surface, thousands of meters above, leave their signatures as hums and rumbles that descend into the depths. Engines, propellers, and distant machinery resonate faintly, reminders that even the deepest waters cannot escape human presence. The trench listens to our movements, recording them in vibrations carried downward. What feels silent to us on deck is felt as tremors in the world's most secret valley. And then there is the sound of Earth itself. The grinding of tectonic plates sends deep groans into the trench. Some are sharp, like cracks splitting through the water, the result of sudden earthquakes. Others are low, a background hum that scientists call the microseism, a constant vibration born of waves colliding across the planet. Even at the bottom of the trench, this hum can be heard, the sound of the earth breathing, ceaseless and quiet. Recordings from hydrophones placed in the trench reveal a soundscape richer than we imagined. Whales, ships, quakes, storms, even raindrops on the surface above send their signatures downward, faint but traceable. A storm in the Pacific may be heard in the trench as a distant roar, the energy of wind and rain translated into vibration. The abyss is not cut off from the surface, it is connected by sound, tied into the rhythms of the whole ocean. For the creatures who live here, this soundscape is life itself. Without light, they rely on the tremors of water to find food, to avoid predators, to recognize one another. Some produce clicks or pulses, tiny compared to the great songs of whales, but no less vital. Each sound is a thread, stitching together the community of the trench in ways we cannot yet understand. To rest with this thought is to realize that silence is never empty. The abyss hums, it resonates, it sings in low tones and sudden cracks. It is not silent but alive with messages, carried invisibly through water. We may not hear them with our ears, but they are there, shaping lives, telling stories, reminding the trench of its place in the wider ocean. And so, as you drift with this thought, a question remains. If even the deepest abyss is filled with sound, what hidden echoes are shaping the quiet spaces within ourselves? To touch the bottom of the trench is to ask machines to do what our bodies cannot. The weight of the ocean is absolute, but through invention and persistence, we have found ways to descend into the black. The story of submersibles is a story of trust, trusting metal, glass, and chemistry, to hold back the pressure of mountains, to carry fragile life into the deepest quiet. The first to attempt it was the bathyscaphe Trieste, launched in 1960. Its design was both simple and ingenious, a heavy steel sphere for the crew, suspended beneath a vast float filled with gasoline. Gasoline, lighter than water and incompressible, provided buoyancy, while the steel sphere protected the men inside. It was not elegant, but it worked. Inside that cramped sphere, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh sat shoulder to shoulder, listening to the creaks of metal as they fell for nearly 5 hours. Their descent was a triumph of engineering at its most elemental: steel against water, float against weight. Modern submersibles rely on materials far stronger and more refined. Many use titanium spheres, polished and shaped to withstand pressures of 16,000 pounds per square inch. These spheres are small, often only large enough for 1 or 2 occupants, yet within them, explorers can sit safely while the ocean presses in from all sides. Outside, the submersible carries lights, cameras, and robotic arms, each encased in housings designed to resist crushing. Every bolt, every seam, every joint is tested beyond endurance, for failure means collapse in an instant. Alongside crewed subs are the remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs. These machines are tethered to ships above by fiber optic cables, allowing scientists to guide them like puppets across the trench floor. ROVs can stay for hours, even days, recording video, collecting samples, probing vents, and mapping landscapes. They are eyes and hands extended into the deep, carrying no human body but transmitting everything back to the surface. In their presence, the trench feels closer, as though its mystery has been bridged by wires of light. Other devices go farther still. Autonomous vehicles, untethered and silent, drift through the abyss on pre-programmed paths. They gather data on temperature, chemistry, and currents, returning only when their work is done. These machines extend our reach not only into the trench, but into time, staying long after humans would have to leave. With them, the deep is no longer a place visited for minutes, but a realm observed for seasons. The technology of submersion is an ongoing dialogue with the ocean. Buoyancy must be balanced, power managed, communication maintained. Even the simplest acts like turning a camera or closing a sample box require careful design. Pressure is unforgiving. What works on the surface must be reimagined for the abyss. Each success is the result of years of patience, each descent a fragile negotiation between invention and nature. For those who ride inside, the experience is unlike anything else. The world outside the porthole is dark, then filled with drifting particles, then empty again. The lights cast narrow cones, illuminating only what is near, leaving the rest in infinite shadow. Inside the sphere there is stillness, the hum of equipment, the measured breathing of the crew. To be there is to feel the scale of the ocean in your very bones, to trust completely in walls only inches thick. And yet, despite the danger, there is also wonder. Every successful descent brings back images and samples that expand our idea of life and Earth itself. Without submersibles, We would not know the snailfish or the microbial mats, the hydrothermal vents or the quiet rain of marine snow. Without technology, the trench would remain imagination alone. With it, the abyss becomes a place we can touch, however briefly. As you imagine this descent, picture yourself inside such a sphere. The world outside black and endless, the lights cutting a thin path ahead. The walls hold, the instruments hum, and you fall deeper, trusting technology to keep you alive. The trench presses, the silence surrounds, and yet you are there, breathing. And so the quiet question arrives. If we can build machines to endure pressures that would crush us, what inner tools might we carry to withstand the invisible weights of our own lives? Only a handful of human beings have ever looked out through a porthole and seen the floor of the Mariana Trench with their own eyes. To travel there is to accept risk that cannot be softened, risk of pressure, of failure, of being beyond rescue. Yet a few have chosen to go, drawn not by conquest but by curiosity, by the deep desire to touch the farthest edge of our planet. The first were Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh in 1960. Inside the steel sphere of the Trieste, they sat in near darkness, with condensation dripping from the walls and the sound of metal creaking under strain. For nearly 5 hours they fell into the abyss, each meter carrying them farther from the surface world. At the bottom, they described a plain of soft sediment, disturbed by their arrival into a cloudy haze. They stayed only long enough to confirm life and the shape of the sea floor, before beginning the long journey upward. Their dive was a feat that seemed at the time unlikely ever to be repeated. Half a century later, James Cameron proved otherwise. In 2012, he descended alone in the Deep-Sea Challenger, a green torpedo-shaped vessel built with years of careful planning. For hours he sat upright, encased in titanium and syntactic foam, watching instruments and monitors as the ocean closed over him. When he reached the bottom, he did not rush to ascend. He filmed, he collected, he lingered, giving the world its first real vision of the Challenger deep. His words afterward spoke of desolation and stillness, but also of wonder, a place that was barren, yes, but also alive in its silence. In 2019, Victor Vescovo extended this story further. His limiting factor submersible made repeated descents, not just one, proving that the deepest ocean could be visited again and again. Each dive carried scientists, instruments and curiosity to the trench floor. They discovered new species, sampled sediments, and confirmed that life thrived even here. But they also found something sobering: plastic debris resting at the deepest point of the Earth. It was proof that no place is untouched by human presence, not even the most remote abyss. These few who have gone below all describe a similar feeling. The descent is long, the pressure absolute, the sphere confining. Yet the moment the seafloor appears is transformative. It is not dramatic. There are no glowing cities, no towering cliffs. Instead, there is stillness, plain and quiet. But in that stillness, something shifts. To see the floor of the world is to feel both fragile and infinite, to know that you have touched a place older and heavier than imagination. Fewer people have been to the Challenger deep than to the moon. This fact lingers like a whisper. It reminds us that the greatest mysteries are not always far away, scattered across the sky, but hidden beneath our own seas. The deep ocean holds its secrets close, and only the most determined have touched them. To think of these explorers is to think of courage, but also of humility. They did not conquer the trench. They visited it briefly, relying on machines, leaving behind no trace but knowledge. The trench remains unchanged, patient and eternal. The visitors come and go, but the abyss waits, as it always has, as it always will. And so the quiet question floats upward from the depths. If so few have reached the bottom of the world, what unvisited places might lie within ourselves, waiting for the courage of descent? In a place where no sunlight falls, the food chain unfolds in ways that defy our surface expectations. On land, green plants catch light and weave it into energy, feeding insects, herbivores, and eventually predators. In shallow seas, algae and plankton play this role, glowing with the strength of the sun. But in the trench there is no light, there are no plants. Here life depends on what drifts down or what can be drawn from the chemistry of the earth itself. The Hadal food chain is a study in patience, scarcity, and strange abundance hidden within stillness. The first source is the steady fall of marine snow, tiny particles of organic matter, the bodies of plankton, the remains of fish, the dust of shells drift down from above, taking weeks or months to reach the floor. To us, they seem small and insubstantial. To trench creatures, they are the currency of survival. Amphipods, snailfish, and other scavengers gather in the sediments, sifting the snow for energy. Each flake carries the memory of the surface, a brief gift from the sunlit layers far above. Without this rain of fragments, the trench would be a desert. Yet not all food comes from above. Some comes from the earth itself. Around hydrothermal vents and cold seeps, bacteria weave sugars from chemicals, hydrogen sulfide, methane, and other compounds released from the crust. These microbes form the base of localized ecosystems, creating oases of life in the dark. Mussels, clams, and tube worms gather here, feeding not on algae but on the bacteria that thrive in the chemical flow. It is as if the earth itself has become a farmer, feeding the deep from within. Scavenging is another cornerstone of the Hadal food web. When a large animal dies at the surface, a whale, a shark, even a tuna, its body may eventually sink into the depths. When it does, it becomes a feast that can last for years. Called whale falls, these carcasses transform the seafloor into temporary ecosystems. First come the scavengers, amphipods, isopods, and deep-sea fish, tearing into soft flesh. Then come the opportunistic microbes, breaking down fats and oils. Finally, long after the bones are bare, bacteria colonize the skeleton itself, releasing nutrients that feed a final wave of life. A single whale can feed the trench for decades. Predation also plays its part, though it unfolds more slowly here. Some fish are ambush hunters, waiting motionless until prey drifts near. Others use bioluminescence to lure victims into striking range. Even amphipods, though scavengers by habit, will turn to live prey when hunger deepens. In a place where food is rare, nothing is wasted. Every body, every fragment, every chemical trace becomes part of the cycle. The mystery lies not just in how these food chains work, but in how stable they remain. Scientists still puzzle over how enough energy reaches the trench to support the life that exists there. Some suspect hidden pathways, currents that sweep nutrients downward, or microbial processes that recycle matter far more efficiently than on the surface. The trench does not starve, even though it should. Something unseen sustains it, a hidden balance that science has only begun to trace. To imagine this food chain is to imagine patience made visible, snow drifting downward, bodies falling rarely but feeding life for years, microbes turning invisible gases into sustenance. There is no waste here, no abundance spilling over. The Hadal food chain is a circle drawn with care, every gift used, every trace consumed. As you rest with this image, think of how life persists where we would expect emptiness. Think of how survival does not always mean plenty, but balance, and let the quiet question rise. If the trench can turn fragments and shadows into a living chain, what hidden energies might be sustaining us, quietly beyond our knowing? The Mariana Trench exists because the Earth is never still. Beneath the Pacific, two immense tectonic plates meet, the Pacific Plate and the smaller Mariana Plate. Their interaction is not gentle. The Pacific Plate is pushed downward, sliding beneath its neighbor in an endless act of subduction. This descent pulls the seafloor into a vast fold, carving the trench like a scar across the planet's skin. To understand the trench is to understand the restless movement of the Earth itself. Subduction is a slow process, measured not in moments but in millennia. Each year, the Pacific Plate slides beneath the Mariana Plate by only a few centimeters, the speed at which fingernails grow. Yet over millions of years, these centimeters become mountains and valleys, islands and abysses. The trench is the product of patience on a planetary scale, the result of countless years of steady motion. Its depth is not sudden but cumulative, a reminder that the Earth shapes itself in silence and persistence. As one plate sinks into the mantle, heat builds, melting rock and feeding volcanoes on the other side of the trench. This is why a chain of volcanic islands lies nearby, the Mariana Islands. Each island is a visible sign of the hidden forces below, a mountain born from the slow death of oceanic crust. In this way, destruction and creation are bound together. The trench swallows old seafloor, but in doing so it births new land above. Earthquakes are another gift of these plates. When friction locks the sliding slabs, tension builds until it breaks free in sudden jolts. These quakes send vibrations through the trench, shifting sediments and reshaping slopes. Sometimes they trigger underwater landslides, sending avalanches of mud and rock cascading into the abyss. To the creatures below, the ground itself moves, as if the world were breathing or shuddering in its sleep. The sinking plate also carries with it sediments, water, and even fragments of ancient sea floor. These materials are pulled downward, recycled into the Earth's mantle. Some of the water returns upward, fueling the hydrothermal vents and volcanic eruptions. Some sediments are consumed entirely, disappearing into the heat of the planet. The trench is not simply a grave, but a passage, a place where Earth's surface is drawn inward, remade into something else. What is remarkable is that this process never ends. The trench is not a static feature, but an ongoing event, a moving boundary, where one part of the planet dives beneath another. Its depth, its shape, its very existence are all temporary, though on timescales far longer than human life. To us, it seems eternal. To the Earth, it is a passing phase in the restless dance of plates. To picture tectonic plates is to imagine continents and oceans, not as fixed, but as rafts adrift on a molten sea. They drift, collide, split, and merge. Mountains rise, trenches sink, islands appear. The Mariana Trench is only one chapter in this story, a reminder that Earth itself is alive with movement. As you hold this thought, imagine the floor beneath you, shifting ever so slowly, continents drifting across ages, oceans reshaping themselves. The trench is only the deepest fold in this endless fabric, and in that fold lies a lesson. Permanence is an illusion, even in the most silent depths. So the quiet question drifts upward. If the very ground of the Earth is always moving, what foundations within us might also be shifting, unnoticed beneath the weight of years? There was once a belief that the deepest ocean was beyond human reach, a sanctuary immune to our touch. The Mariana Trench, more than 10 kilometers down, seemed untouchable, a world sealed off by darkness, pressure and silence. Yet in recent years, scientists have found proof that even here at the edge of the planet, the traces of human life have arrived. Pollution has reached the Hadal zone, and with it comes a sobering reminder: no place is truly separate from the surface. In 2017, researchers sampled amphipods from the trench and discovered microplastics in their bodies. These creatures, tiny scavengers of the abyss, had consumed particles shed from bottles, packaging and clothing fibers, fragments that drifted down through the water until they became part of the food web. To find them here was startling, proof that the rain of marine snow now carries not only organic matter, but the remnants of our industry. Even in the silence of the trench, plastic has become part of the story of life. Larger debris has been found as well. When Viktor Veskov piloted his submersible to the Challenger Deep, he reported seeing plastic waste resting on the sea floor. Bags and fragments lay among sediments that had been untouched for millennia. Their presence was not dramatic, but it was undeniable. The trench floor was no longer pristine. Human materials, light enough to float, had been drawn downward by currents, weighted by time, and deposited in the deepest valley on Earth. Chemical pollution has also been detected. Persistent organic pollutants, industrial chemicals banned decades ago, have been measured in trench organisms at concentrations higher than in many polluted rivers on land. These compounds, once released into the air and water, traveled across the globe, sinking eventually into the abyss. They do not break down easily. Instead, they accumulate in tissues, carried up the food chain, altering the very chemistry of Hadal life. For scientists, these findings are both shocking and expected. Shocking because the trench is remote, hostile and hidden. Expected because the ocean is one system, its currents carrying surface material to the farthest corners of the globe. Nothing we release is truly lost. It drifts, it sinks, it cycles, until even the most remote place feels its presence. The trench is not apart from our world, it is part of it, receiving what we discard. And yet, life endures. Amphipods still thrive, snailfish still glide, microbes still weave chemistry from rock and water. Pollution has not erased the trench, but it has left a fingerprint, a reminder that our actions ripple farther than we imagine. To know that plastic rests at the bottom of the Earth is to feel both sorrow and connection. Sorrow for what has been lost, connection for the realization that we are bound even to the places we never see. Perhaps there is a lesson in this too. The trench shows us that separation is illusion. We are not above or outside the deep ocean. We are linked to it by breath, by climate, by currents, and now by pollution. What we release returns to us in altered form, shaping the systems that sustain us. The trench is a mirror, reflecting not only Earth's geology, but our own choices. So as you breathe and imagine the sea floor, picture a plastic fragment resting among ancient sediments, surrounded by creatures who neither know nor care where it came from. It is simply part of their world now. And ask yourself the quiet question: if even the deepest places bear the marks of our presence, how will we choose to live, knowing nothing we do is ever truly separate? Though the Mariana Trench is the deepest, it is not alone. Across the oceans, other trenches cut their way into the sea floor, each formed by the same patient movement of tectonic plates, each hosting a world of darkness, pressure, and hidden life. To compare them is to glimpse the diversity of Earth's deepest valleys, a reminder that the Mariana is only one voice in a global chorus of abysses. The Tonga Trench in the South Pacific is nearly as deep as the Mariana. Its lowest point, the Horizon Deep, reaches over 10 kilometers. The Tonga Trench is younger and more active, marked by frequent earthquakes and powerful volcanic arcs. It is considered one of the most geologically dynamic places on Earth, a trench where the planet seems restless, reshaping itself with every tremor. Scientists who study Tonga note that while it lacks the fame of the Mariana, it rivals it in scale and significance. To the north lies the Japan Trench, a feature etched into public memory by the 2011 earthquake and tsunami. This trench, where the Pacific Plate subducts beneath Japan, is a reminder that these features are not only distant curiosities, they shape human history. The quakes they generate ripple through cities and coasts, reminding us that the line between ocean and land is not so secure. The Japan Trench holds depths of more than 8 kilometers, but its greatest impact is measured not in meters but in human lives altered by the shifting Earth. The Puerto Rico Trench in the Atlantic is the deepest point of that ocean, descending over 8 kilometers. Its shape is different, narrower, and more sharply defined, but it tells the same story of subduction and collision. For those who live in the Caribbean, it is not a distant feature, but a near neighbor, capable of generating tsunamis and shaping the seafloor with quiet force. Unlike the Pacific trenches, it rests in a different ocean basin, showing that the Earth's deepest processes are global, not confined to one hemisphere. The Kermadec Trench, stretching north of New Zealand, also plunges beyond 10 kilometers. Like Tonga, it is active and vibrant, part of a subduction zone that produces volcanoes and earthquakes. Researchers studying its ecosystems have found amphipods and snailfish, much like those in the Mariana, suggesting that the Hadal zone, though scattered and isolated, produces similar adaptations across the globe. To find a snailfish in the Kermadec is to recognize kinship with the snailfish of the Mariana, separated by thousands of kilometers, but shaped by the same pressures of the deep. Each trench holds its own mysteries, but together they form a pattern. They are scars in the crust, gateways into the mantle, homes for creatures that live in silence. They remind us that the Mariana is not an exception, but part of a family, one among many deep valleys hidden beneath the sea. By comparing them, we see both their uniqueness and their unity, different locations, different depths, but all born of tectonic descent, all reservoirs of pressure and patience. To think of them is to realize that the Earth is more folded and scarred than it seems from above. Our maps of continents and oceans are flat compared to the truth. Mountains rise beneath the waves, valleys plunge deeper than the sky is high, and trenches lace the sea floor like hidden canyons. The Mariana may be the deepest, but it is not alone. The planet holds many abysses, each with its own silence, each with its own story. And as you rest with this thought, let the quiet question settle. If the Earth holds many hidden valleys, each deeper than imagination, what unseen depths might lie within us, waiting parallel and unmeasured? The Mariana Trench is not only a feature of the ocean, it is a teacher, a reminder of how our planet works beneath the surface of our daily lives. To look at it closely is to see the Earth stripped of illusion, to glimpse processes so vast and slow that they shape continents, climates, and the story of life itself. The trench, silent and hidden, is a key to understanding what kind of world we live upon. The first lesson is that the Earth is restless. The trench exists because the planet is always moving, its crust pulled inward, its plates colliding and folding. We may walk upon land that feels solid, but below it is a cycle of destruction and renewal. Old seafloor disappears into the mantle, fueling volcanoes, reshaping oceans, creating islands. To know the trench is to know that stability is only temporary. The Earth is alive with motion, even when we cannot feel it. The second lesson is about recycling on a planetary scale. As sediments, rocks, and even ocean water are dragged into the mantle through subduction, they are eventually returned to the surface in volcanic eruptions and new crust. Nothing is lost, only transformed. The trench is a reminder that endings are beginnings in disguise. It swallows, but it also feeds a paradox that mirrors cycles we see in life itself. The third lesson is about connection. What falls at the surface, plankton, plastics, whale carcasses, drifts eventually into the trench. The abyss is not isolated. It receives the world's offerings, both natural and human. Its sediments are archives, recording the history of the ocean, climate, and even our own presence. In this way, the trench is not just a geological feature, but a library, one that stores stories written in layers of mud. To study it is to read Earth's diary, patient and impartial. The fourth lesson is about possibility. The Hadal zone shows that life is not bound by light or warmth. It flourishes under crushing pressure, in chemical oases, in scarcity and silence. This expands our understanding not only of Earth, but of life itself, reminding us that resilience is more common than fragility. If life can exist here, it may exist elsewhere, on icy moons, in alien oceans, in places we have not yet imagined. The trench turns speculation into evidence, showing that survival writes itself in countless ways. The final lesson is humility. To confront the trench is to confront scale. Its depth dwarfs our mountains, its silence outlasts our noise. Fewer people have seen it than the moon, and yet it lies beneath our own seas. It reminds us that the Earth is vaster than our imaginations, stranger than our stories, older than our histories. To learn from the trench is not to master it, but to accept our place within it, small, temporary, and deeply connected to forces far larger than ourselves. As you let these lessons settle, imagine the trench not as a wound, but as a teacher, patient and unyielding. It does not shout, it does not command, it simply exists, reminding us of cycles, connections, possibilities and humility. The Earth is written into its depths, and in those depths we can see reflections of our own lives, constant change, quiet endurance, the turning of endings into beginnings. And so the quiet question rises. If the trench teaches us that Earth is restless, connected and resilient, what lessons might we uncover by looking not only outward, but inward? When scientists peer into the Mariana Trench, they do not see only Earth, they see possibility written across the universe. For if life can survive here, in darkness absolute, under pressures immense, without sunlight or warmth, then perhaps it can exist elsewhere, hidden beneath the icy shells of distant moons, or in the deep oceans of worlds we have never touched. The trench is both a place and a mirror, reflecting not just our planet, but our imagination of others. Consider Europa, a moon of Jupiter, its surface sealed in ice. Beneath that frozen crust lies an ocean deeper than Earth's, warmed not by sunlight but by tidal flexing, the pull and strain of Jupiter's gravity. For years, scientists wondered if life could exist there. The trench provides an answer. It shows that ecosystems can thrive on chemical energy alone, that microbes need not see the sun to endure. The vent communities of the Hadal zone are previews of what Europa might hold: bacteria feeding on minerals, larger creatures gathering around them, an alien food chain born of stone and water. Or think of Enceladus, a moon of Saturn. Jets of water spray into space from cracks in its surface, carrying hints of salts and organic molecules. Beneath its crust too lies an ocean. The trench reminds us that such oceans need not be barren. Life here uses hydrogen sulfide, methane, and simple compounds to weave itself into existence. If microbes can do it in the Mariana, why not beneath Enceladus's ice? Its geysers may be more than plumes of water. They may be signals of hidden ecosystems below. Even farther out, on planets circling other stars, the lessons of the trench expand the definition of habitability. We once thought life required light and warmth, but the Hadal zone proves otherwise. Pressure and cold are not barriers, they are simply conditions, and life can adapt. The trench whispers that the universe may be more crowded with life than we imagined. Not life that looks like us, but life written in unfamiliar shapes, as strange to us as snailfish are to a dolphin. Exploring the trench is in this way practice for exploring space. Submersibles and probes that survive crushing pressure are cousins of the machines that may one day dive beneath alien ice. Hydrothermal vent studies prepare us to read chemical oases far from Earth. Even the discovery of pollution in the trench offers lessons. What we leave behind will mark us, just as any trace we find elsewhere will mark another. But beyond science there is wonder. To imagine alien oceans is to imagine other versions of silence, other constellations of bioluminescent sparks, other food webs built on patience and scarcity. The trench suggests that our Earth is not an exception but a hint, one example of what worlds can be. In its silence, we hear echoes of places we have not yet touched, seas we have not yet crossed. As you breathe and drift with this thought, imagine the trench not only as Earth's deepest point, but as a window into the cosmos. Its lessons ripple outward, turning darkness into possibility, turning silence into promise. And let the quiet question remain: if the trench shows us that life can bloom in hidden oceans, what unseen worlds might already be alive, waiting for us in the dark between stars? To speak of the Mariana Trench is to speak of the Earth's outermost secret, a place hidden beneath miles of water, silent, patient, immense. Yet when we imagine it, when we picture its black plains and slow rain of marine snow, we cannot help but turn inward as well. The trench becomes a metaphor, a mirror for the depths we carry within ourselves, the places unseen but no less real. Each of us knows something of pressure, not the crushing tons of seawater, but the invisible weight of time, memory, and expectation. In the trench, creatures survive by yielding, by softening, by reshaping themselves to endure. Their bodies are not armored but pliant, their chemistry tuned to embrace the pressure rather than resist it. Perhaps we too endure not by hardening ourselves against what presses upon us, but by allowing it to shape us into new forms. What seems unbearable may become simply the environment in which we learn to live. Each of us knows something of silence, not the heavy hush of the abyss, but the pauses between words, the spaces where thoughts linger unspoken. In the trench, silence is not emptiness. It is filled with vibrations, the calls of whales, the groans of shifting rock, the faint crackle of life moving unseen. Our own silences may be the same. What seems void may hold echoes. If we learn to listen, what seems absence may be presence in another key. Each of us knows something of darkness, not the total night of the Hadal zone, but the moments when clarity is gone, when vision narrows, when the path ahead feels hidden. In the trench, darkness is not the end of life, but its beginning. Bioluminescence sparks against it. Microbes weave sustenance in its shadow. Entire ecosystems grow without need of the sun. Our own darkness may also be fertile, not barren. From it, new ways of living, of seeing, of being may rise. And each of us knows something of hidden worlds. Within the trench lie ecosystems invisible to the surface, communities sustained by forces we barely understand. Within us lie emotions, memories, and possibilities equally hidden, waiting for patient descent. Few have ventured into the Challenger deep, yet it exists, shaping Earth whether we acknowledge it or not. Few venture fully into their own depths, yet they exist too, shaping us quietly from within. To meditate on the trench is to meditate on humility. We are small against it, fragile against its pressure, temporary against its timescale, yet we are also capable of reaching it, of listening, of learning. The trench does not ask for conquest, it simply waits, a reminder that mystery endures, and that to encounter it is to encounter something larger than ourselves. So as you rest with the image of the Earth's deepest valley, let it guide you inward. Picture its walls rising higher than mountains, its silence humming with unseen life, its floor holding both ancient sediments and fragments of our own making. Then picture your own hidden landscapes, equally vast, equally mysterious. The trench and the self are not so different. Both hold pressure, silence, darkness and life. Both are shaped by forces unseen. Both are deeper than they appear. And as the journey closes, let this quiet question remain, floating like a final echo from the abyss. If the trench can hold both silence and survival, both fragility and resilience, what might we discover if we dare to descend into the deepest places of ourselves? We have drifted together through 100 quiet discoveries, from the shape of the trench to the lives that glow within it, from microbes weaving chemistry to the silence that hums with sound. Along the way, we touched the Challenger deep, listened to echoes of other trenches, and even looked outward, imagining alien oceans that might hold reflections of our own. The Mariana Trench, though hidden and heavy with darkness, has not been empty. It has been alive with patience, with adaptation, with lessons written into every layer of mud and every fragile body that endures. It has shown us that life does not resist its environment, but becomes it. That silence is never void, but filled with echoes. That pressure can shape rather than destroy, and that even in the deepest place on Earth, we can find mirrors of ourselves. The question we carried from the beginning still lingers. If the deepest valleys of the Earth hold mystery and life, what unseen depths might lie within us? Perhaps the answer is not to conquer them, but to listen, to rest, to breathe, to allow silence to speak. The trench does not shout its lessons. It waits, quiet and immense, teaching through presence alone. As you let your eyes close, imagine sinking one last time through light, through twilight, through darkness, until you reach the floor of the world. There is no fear here, only stillness. Pressure holds you like a weightless hand. Silence surrounds you like a blanket. In that silence, you are not separate from the trench, but part of it, a living being, carried in the same cycles, shaped by the same patience. And when you rise again, whether in waking or in dreams, you rise a little wiser, a little quieter, carrying with you the reminder that mystery is not far away. It is beneath you, within you, around you, always waiting. Sleep well, drift gently. Tomorrow, another nature nap will carry us into another hidden corner of the wild. But for now, let go and rest in the deep.